Research shows that fear of public speaking is consistently ranked one of the highest fears for people all over the world. However, public speaking has become essential to success in every walk of life. It has become an important professional skill. This episode, we have Josh Fleming, Professor and Director of the Forensics Programs here at Pasadena City College, Alexis Arredondo, an award-winning student on the speech team at Pasadena City College, and Adam Perez, one of the competing students on the debate team. Welcome to PCC Voices, the Art of Public Speaking. Welcome to PCC Voices. I am Nagam Weeby. Today's episode is about public speaking and the speech and debate program at PCC. Our guests here are Adam, Josh, and Alexis. Thank you for being our guests today.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah. Well, if we can go around and get a brief introduction from each one of you, we can start with you, Adam.
Well, my name is Adam Perez. I've been competing for a long time, but I had a break in the middle, so I kind of just came back within this last semester, and I do multiple events and love speaking with Josh and this team here.
Okay.
I'm Josh Fleming, so I'm the director of the speech and debate team. And so I've been directing the program since 2008 when I came here full-time from Glendale College. And so this is actually my last, I'm retiring out of coaching and directing the speech team. And we're transitioning to a new director of the speech team, Cindy Fu. So, but this is it for me. So
Wow.
this is nice.
Yeah, it's good that we have you here.
I'm Alexis Arredondo, and I'm part of the speech part of the speech and debate team, and so I do more acting events, and we just got back from nationals, and so that was really exciting, and we're excited to come and talk about it with you guys.
Great. Thank you for being here again. Okay, our first segment for today's episode is about public speaking in general. Do you think that people have it in them when they're born, or is it something learned, or is it a little bit of both? What do you think?
I'd say that everyone has the ability to speak. I mean, you want to communicate from a very small age to your parents and to your family and people. I think the fear that people have is from coming in front of a large audience, and that's something that they're not used to. So I think that everybody can, really, and people are very surprised. One of the more successful people on our team, she had a huge fear of speaking publicly, but she's doing really well now, and so I kind of just feel like everybody can do it, despite their fear and their familiarity with it.
Yeah, I think naturally everyone gets nervous speaking in front of people, especially if you're not used to it, but if you practice a lot, you can never practice enough, and that sort of gives you the confidence to be able to get in front of a big audience. And so I think it's harder for some people who are shyer or introverted, but everyone can do it.
And so with public speaking, what people focus on is the actual context in which they're in front of others, but really they're just exercising what is the basic skill, which is communication. Mm-hmm. And so in my classes, when I teach my regular public speaking classes, I'm I still get nervous on the first day right before I see you, and that's totally fine. Mm-hmm. And then we jump into it and we have a good time. And so once students know that the professor, still experiences those butterflies in the stomach, then that helps them kind of settle down. And then on the speech team, we have all these different forms of just communication. That's all these different speeches are just different forms of communication. And so when you try different ones, like Alexis this year, she tried a different form of communication than she's normally used to. And so I'm sure she would tell you that she was nervous giving it a try for the first time. Adam as well. Adam usually does debate, and he did a style called oral interpretation. And I bet he was nervous the first time he had to go and try that because it's a different context. But once you overcome that, you just realize it's still just a unique style of communication, then that kind of helps you feel a little bit more comfortable.
What are the different forms of speeches?
There's three different genres, and so there's the speech side, and there's 11 different individual events. And so one area is called limited preparation, where you have students or competitors are given a topic, and then they have a very short amount of time in which to prepare and then deliver a speech on that topic. So for example, impromptu speaking, which Thomas does. You're given a set of quotations, and you have 2 minutes to pick one of those quotations and then agree or disagree with it, and then speak for 5 minutes in support or against that quote. And so it's all done right there. Another area is called, which is normally called like public speaking, but we call it platform speaking, which is where you have like informative speaking, persuasive speaking, and then like one of the ones that Alexis did this year called speech to entertain, which is basically like humorous, informative, or persuasive speaking. It's not stand-up, but still like there's a purpose to it and everything. And there's a very scholarly one called communication analysis. And then the third area is oral interpretation of literature. So that's like the most performance or theatrical one, or like acting, but it's acting out of specific genres of literature. So like short stories, or like Adam did poetry this year, or one called dramatic interpretation that Alexis did. And so they're performing like a specific message from the literature that they've found. So that's all just the speech side. And then there's debate. And debate is, we have 3 different styles of debate. One of them is limited preparation, team debate, which Adam does. And then there's another style where basically the team gets like a topic and they have 20 minutes prepared and then they go in and debate on it. Another one is called NFALD. And that's where speakers have one topic that they get at the beginning, they get in August. And then they research and prepare cases around that topic and they debate it all year long for like 8 months.
Oh.
So.
Well, we're going to have a segment about debate where we'll go into that in more details. But going back to speech, so what is your favorite one and why?
Well, I love Interp, and so I love the acting events. And this year I had a DI and a prose, and so DI is basically you're playing a character, and so you embody that character to try and prove something academic, to try and prove a point. And then prose is storytelling. And so last year I did the poetry. Adam did poetry this year, and so I really lean towards the acting events because just for me they're more fun, and I have more of an acting background, and so it comes more naturally for me.
And which one is the one that you like the least, and why? Or you can't say that?
I don't know if there's a specific like a speech that I like the least. I love all the speeches that I've done, and of course you want to love like what you're doing. I've never done debate. I've never done impromptu, which is what Thomas does, and so I don't really know how well I would do with those with those categories. But
What about you, Adam?
So I'm kind of the opposite of Alexis, where I started off with debate, and in high school I took competing debate, and I loved it, and that's why when I came here originally to PCC, I started with debate, and I love that limited prep side of it, where you don't know what you're going to talk about, you have to think on your feet, and that's always been my strong suit. But then coming into this season, I took one of Josh's classes in Interp, and I fell in love with it, and I thought, man, I can really do this, and I enjoy it, and it's different where you have time to like craft exactly what you want to say and how you want to say it, kind of the things that you miss out on in debate. So it's kind of hard for me right now to say which one I like more, because I feel like I've kind of added different tools to each of the events from learning them. I haven't had an opportunity to do a platform. Hopefully maybe in the future I will do a speech entertain, because I think I'm funny sometimes. So, but I like debate. I like thinking on my feet. I like just being able to know, okay, there's a clear winner here, or man, I made this really good point, and it's not up to me or the person. It's up to the judge in the long run. So that's what's pretty fun about it.
And Josh, do you have a favorite?
Do I have a favorite? Well, I mean, the interpretive events are probably my favorite, just because that was what I primarily competed in when I did forensics. They have there's a lot of versatility, and actually, what I like about them so much is that there's a lot of rules and parameters for all of the events, and because the interpretive ones are creative in nature, and yet there's these very strict rules and parameters. It's this constant, like, how can I stretch and bend and make something new within this same box that we've been working with for like the past, 40 years or something like that. And so that's what has always been enjoyable, is like, you keep thinking that there's these, set boundaries, and then you find something, or you do something, or you see something that completely like puts the box on its side and shows you a different perspective. You're like, that was amazing. And so, but then like the platform speeches, more and more, I mean, there's informative speeches, you learn, like your brain just kind of blows up when you learn so much new information. And I think for me, it's really rewarding to sit down with students and to coach them from like a research perspective and watch them learn. Like, I mean, doing interp is, coaching interp is fun. And it's very rewarding to watch like students grow and become better, but with platform, to watch a student learn and like make that material their own and everything, that's really rewarding too.
Yeah, I think that like me just doing interp the past 2 years, and then this past year I picked up a platform, which was my STE, my speech to entertain, and that was just like a whole new experience of research and finding sources and constructing how to write a speech, and so that was really difficult to do. And I think that any platformer or interpreter could tell you, like, if they were to do either events that they weren't used to doing, then they have a whole new appreciation for it, because they're all really difficult and they're all really incredible to watch.
So as you were saying earlier, that the nerves are always there. It's not
Yeah.
that it's not something that will go away. So how do you work with that, or how do you use that for your benefit?
My response, because people ask me that a lot, is I say that nerves are just energy, and you need to be able to direct it, kind of metaphysically in the right way. And so if you know that you're anxious and you're like, all that really is like additional energy that you need to channel in the right direction. And so if you can just not be afraid of that anxiety and be like, all I need to do is tell all the butterflies in my stomach to like come out to my voice and make the right sounds. And so it just becomes additional like support for what you need to do. And when people get comfortable with that, they get comfortable with being nervous, and then it's no longer such a foreign feeling. It's not so scary.
What about?
Yeah, I think that what makes me nervous the most is when I'm sitting in a round ready to compete and I'm seeing other speakers go up. And of course, you're sitting in the round and you're trying to place yourself like, oh, am I going to be better than this person? Can I do like better than this person? Because you want to win and you want to do well. And so for me, I always just tell myself, like, I've done everything I can to prepare for this. Like, I'm going to go up, I'm going to do my best. Like, this is going to be good. And I tell everyone, I always do this thing where I'm like, I'm Beyonce. Okay, I'm just gonna pretend that I'm Beyonce and have that confidence when I go up there, and just I want to have power in every sentence I say.
Welcome back to PCC Voices. This episode is about public speaking and the speech and debate team at PCC. So tell us more about debate. What is the difference between debate and speech?
Well, the debate is you are pretty much one-on-one against another person. Either a team, you and your partner against another two people. There are other events that like we don't compete in that have multiple like huge teams, but the ones that we compete in are either single person or with a partner. And it's just, I appreciate that competitiveness. It's not just, okay, you get your time, I get my time. There's still like, you don't get to talk over each other really, but it's head to head, and you're trying to convince this judge about whatever it is. You don't know what you're going into, or if you do LD, you do know it and you're like, okay.
What's LD?
LD is a Lincoln Douglas debate, and so I didn't do that this year. I intended on doing it, but they had a new type of debate called IPDA, and it's kind of like the team debate, but it's one-on-one, where you get, a list of 5 topics. You end up choosing one of them in the long run, and then you have a side. You're choosing for or against it. And that whole limited prep, thinking on your toes, being almost like just, you get to research specifically things, so you have the access to the same information. Sometimes you get internet access, sometimes you have an almanac and a dictionary. And it's kind of like just one of those things where the rush of being there and knowing, okay, I've come up against these people before, I know this judge, and it's pretty exhilarating. I like it to a different degree of the performance aspects of interp or of platform, and so it's head to head, and I think that's the biggest difference for the most part.
And are there different forms of debate or different kinds?
Oh yeah, I mean, nationwide there's tons of different styles of debate. And so the ones that are the most popular on the West Coast are parliamentary debate, which is the 2-person or 2-on-2, and that's the limited prep, where you get one topic and you have 20 minutes to prepare, and then you already know what side you're on, and then you and your partner come in. So it'd be like you two against us, and the topic or the resolution is going to be that, orange is the new black. And we're like, oh, okay, that's going to be our topic. And so a lot of things go on in that 20 minutes, where you're like, first we have to do some definitions. We have to understand what type of like resolution or topic this is, because that creates certain expectations and rules and everything. There's a lot of technical jargon, there's a lot of words that only exist in the realm of academic debate that do not exist anywhere else.
Solvency.
Yeah, and so a lot of it can be overwhelming. But that's also what attracts a lot of people, is because they like that kind of like superior, like elitist knowledge. Like you're like, I know words you don't. And so that's the biggest debate that we do on the West Coast. Then there's Lincoln Douglas, which is one-on-one. It's completely research-based, and it's one topic that, it's a very large topic. Like this year was about government involvement in like exploration on the moon, and either like using it for mineral rights, water rights, or agriculture. And so I think that's correct. And so then like over the course of the year, people do tons of research on like how that works, what they could do, why it's bad, stuff like that. And it's very intense, because even though it's one topic, you're constantly changing your strategies because you're hitting new people. And then you hit them again, you're like, I know what you did last time, and so you try to change your strategy. So it never really gets boring. And then the new style that Adam mentioned, IPDA, which is International Public Debate Association, that's kind of like a more casual form of debate, where all of the rules and formality and stuff that makes like parliamentary so standoffish and overwhelming to some is stripped away. And it's just like, you talk. And so a lot of people who like Alexis would be more able in doing IPDA simply because all the rules and everything no longer apply. There's like 2 rules, like the time limits that you can speak and where you can do your research from.
What are the other rules? Is it different?
Some of the rules have to deal with just like time limits and like the speaking order. Some of them though have to do with like when arguments can be introduced, kind of like in a court of law. At some point, like once there's been closing arguments, you can't introduce new arguments because then it becomes inadmissible. There has to be a point when like the judge can no longer make any more decisions based off new evidence and stuff like that. There's different violations that can happen, just like with like any type of like sport or anything like that. Like you can't go out of these bounds and so forth. And if you do, that's the reason for you to lose and stuff like that. So.
And is the goal always to convince the other person, or is it sometimes just to prove that your point is valid, no matter if the other person?
Not the person, it's the judge.
Right.
And so.
Yeah, the judge is who I try my best to communicate specifically to the judge. So you mentioned the other team, and you want to be courteous. That's part of what you're judged on in IPDA as well as parliamentary debate. But also you want to make sure that the judge understands what you're saying. You can speak really quickly, you can think you made a good point, but if you don't convince the judge, then they're the one who's going to say, well, they made good points and I didn't even hear what you had to say, or it didn't make sense to me. So for the most part, sometimes you can kind of convince the opposing team. If you can convince the opposing team that you're right, then I think you've won the round in the long run anyway. So that just kind of comes with the ground and the territory of being an expert at it and being able to just box your opponent in a corner and say, well, you're saying this in the long run. So it's like a mental gymnastics, ninja sword fight, and all sorts of stuff put into one, offense and defense. So
it's a lot of pressure.
Yeah.
You get used to it after a while, especially because, at an average tournament, like just for the preliminary rounds of competition, you're normally, if you're doing debate, you're going to debate at least 6 different times just in the preliminary rounds. So you get used to doing that over and over and over. And then when we practice, we're doing practice debates over and over and over. So you become familiar and comfortable with like the language and the pressure and stuff like that. It just becomes kind of second nature.
And then there's some people who talk really, really fast, and you're like, man, stop talking fast. It's supposed to be a friendly, discussion, but in the long run, they're just like, you're like, oh man, I can only write so fast, man. Like,
what about emotions? Do people?
Oh yeah. Ooh. So.
Yeah.
So I try to tell people that in the end, this is like, especially with debate, it's just a game. It really is. Like it's an academic, which they don't like, but it's an academic game. And some of them go in thinking that if I don't pick them up, I have some, if I haven't voted in their favor, that I'm some way invalidating what they have been saying or doing. I'm like, it's not like that at all. It's just that this is happening in a bubble and it's reflective of the real world. But maybe your strategy wasn't very on point and the other person's was, and so I bought into that more. But some people, I always want competition to be healthy, but I can't control how other people, approach competition. So on our team, we're like, have fun.
Yeah.
sometimes you're going to win, sometimes you're not, and so you just have to kind of roll with it. So,
In the middle of, like, when they're doing it, do people show emotions, or is that considered
Oh, absolutely.
weakness,
Yeah.
or how?
So I think part of it being off the cuff, and you have your prep time, but your prep time, you're just kind of putting up a skeleton of a speech. You know what the things you want to say in a very, quick and easy version. But when you get up there, you have to fill 7, 8, 5 minutes at a time. And so you learn how to fill that and how to make sentences sound nice and convincing. But in the long run, that limited prep nature to it actually ends up causing people to get like excited, and especially if it's something they're really convicted about. Sometimes you don't know anything about the topic and you're like, man, China, like I didn't do enough research on China. So you go off of these presuppositions or like stereotypes on accident, and then a judge will even write that on his ballot, like, man, you kind of like were offensive a little bit, but like I still had to vote for you because you made good points. But then other people, they can seem like they're attacking you, and that's what debate's not about. And but debate's not about like, you're wrong, you deserve to like just go home and cry. And really it's for the benefit of being educational. And so sometimes people, when they know a lot about a subject, they tend to put their heart and soul into it, and they can be kind of abusive. So judges pay attention to it, and I try to be as lighthearted and be humorous. But then you'll see some people who, especially the longer you go into it, the people really know their stuff, and they try to hammer you. Especially if they can get you like, oh, you're a fascist then because you said this, and you're like, oh, I didn't really say that, man. I'm sorry, but people get crazy.
and when you study persuasion, which is basically what debate is, it's a persuasion game. Like, emotion is fine. Like, emotion is one of the components that is allowed to be used, so long as it's not manipulative. If you're fabricating the emotion for the sake of trying to win the judge's ballot, that's unethical. But we do sometimes debate topics that get personal. Like, people touch upon things, or they advance a case that actually has a lot of like personal meaning to them. And so they do get, sometimes they do get emotional. You talk about, say, like drone strikes, and you had someone who was in the military, or you talk about, say, some type of policy relating to sexual assault, and the person has been sexually assaulted, and that's why they're advocating for this case. It can become personal, but when it's that genuine, you allow them to do that because they're wanting to get their voice out.
So for someone who's a beginner at debate, what would you tell them as advices or tips? Or
get to love research. Get to love current events all over the world.
I would say always understand that you can be wrong, because you will come up against some people who know less than you, but a lot of times you'll come up against people who know a lot more than you. So being able to stick to your guns and be cool while still thinking, okay, I might be wrong here, but I can still win this round. So people who like to argue think, oh, I could be a good debater, but it's really knowing like what wins an argument and not just what you know for the most part.
And Alexis, I know that you are more involved in speech, but are you interested in debate, or what do you think about it in general?
I have a lot of respect for people that do the debate, because it's not really something that I think I would be good at doing. So good job, Adam. You're awesome.
Sometimes.
Like you what? Great.
Welcome again to PCC Voices. I am Nagam Weeby. Our episode today is about public speaking and the forensics program at PCC. So can you tell us more about the program? What do you do? What are the levels? Like, how do people get involved in it?
Forensics, for here on our campus, forensics is a class. So anyone can join the forensics team. We don't have like an auditioning process or anything like that. It's just changed actually in the fall. It'll be listed as Speech 5. So it used to be Speech 5A and 5B, and now it's just going to be a 3-unit class called Speech 5. During that time when we meet, we work on, we get to know the students if we don't already know them, and then we start to kind of figure out and diagnose what they would be interested in doing. So you're like, are you more interested in argumentation? Then here, let's talk about debate. So are you more interested in performance? Then here, let's talk about doing interpretation. And so over the course of the semester, we help students find events that they want to compete in, and then we travel them to competitions. Most of them here, since we're in Los Angeles, are all local. So we go to about 4 or 5 competitions per semester. and students are required, for the sake of the class, to go to like a minimum of 2 and to compete in, I think, 2 events at 2 different competitions. And so that helps fulfill the units for the class. And if they are coming to class and practicing and everything, then usually they get the full credit for the class.
How did you hear about the program and when did you join?
Well, I joined last year and I was in a Speech 1 class and I didn't really know anything about speech, and it was kind of my first experience writing informative and persuasive speeches. And so my teacher, my professor, Alan, recruited me, and originally he recruited me as a platformer. And then I went to a competition here at the school and I was like, hey, so there's acting events. How about that? I think I want to do that. And he was like, well, okay, like, what you got? Like, show me a monologue or something. Show me you can act. And I was like, okay. And so, yeah, then I just got into doing the interpretive speaking, and I ended up really loving it and loving the competitions, and then sticking with it for the full 2 years.
So I, way back many moons ago, came to PCC out of high school and had done a little bit of high school debate. And so when I took argumentation and debate as a class here at PCC, my professor recommended that I and another student in the class, Ben Perez, to join forces and join the speech and debate team. And both of us were just like, man, whatever. So they said, no, just go to a competition, try it out. If you don't like it, like, you don't have to join the team, not a big deal. So we went and we did really well. We took gold at our first tournament and it was crazy and it was awesome. And so him and I just kind of said, okay, well, we'll join it. And so I did that for a semester. I came in the spring of whatever, something. And then I came back this past spring, and I had been meaning to take a speech class and rejoin, and my major didn't allow it, but I ended up taking an oral interp class with Josh. And it was my first time. I've never done any acting or anything like that, and my first time taking this class, and I really, really enjoyed it. And he really fostered that, like,
He was good, too.
ability. Yeah, and so he made me feel like I could be good, and I wanted to join the team anyway. So I was like, all right, well, we'll do this. So I showed up, and it was awesome. I think that speech and debate has this, like, a cult following, like this community that people see. And
we're kind of crazy.
Yeah, some people are intimidated by it. They're like, okay, like weirdos, whatever. But we're not that weird, you know? We get along and we're a big family, and people are either drawn to that or they're like, what is this thing?
Yeah.
And it's beautiful to see people who didn't expect to be able to join, and, you know, or people who came up with acting backgrounds or debate backgrounds. And it's awesome. It's awesome to be a part of that community and to feel that. So I'm hooked on it, kind of, you know.
Yeah.
Which I wanted to ask, like, how did taking that class or being involved in that program change your life or affected?
Oh my God. Well, I stopped having time to do normal people things like have friends and eat and like sleep and normal things. But it was amazing. I think that just as a team, everyone on the team sort of has like this respect for each other that, like, hey, I know you work hard and I work hard, and we're all doing this together, and we're all supporting each other and going to these competitions together. And so just going through that experience binds us together so much. And so, yeah, I forgot what the question was.
How did it affect your life?
So, right. For me, my first day joining the team, I just remember that everyone was really close, and like I entered the classroom and automatically I saw that everyone had like inside jokes, and like it seemed like everyone were like best friends, and everyone was really close to the coaches, and I was like, wow, this is really overwhelming. Like, no one's talking to me. Oh my God, like I'm not gonna have any friends. I don't know what to do. And then watching them perform, before that I was like, oh yeah, I do acting. Like, this will be fine. It'll be easy. And then my first day watching people perform, I was like, I don't know if I can do this. Like, this seems really difficult. Like, what they're doing, they have these 10-minute long speeches, and they're perfect. They're flawless. They're so clean. And so I never thought that I could do that. And then I did it. And then I started doing well. And we just got back from nationals, and I won 3 gold medals.
Wow.
And I placed.
Congratulations.
Thank you. And I placed. I got a bronze medal as top speaker in the nation, and so that like completely changed everything for me. I was like, oh wow, like here's this thing that I never thought I would be able to do, and that I thought I was good enough at doing, and then I did really well, and like it worked out.
It's one of those things that kind of show you. The first time that I joined the team, I didn't really quite take it as seriously as I did this time, and I think because the social dynamic is a little bit different, and I was at a different place then, but you want to spend time in the squad room, you want to be around each other, you want to encourage each other, even if you're not working on speeches, you're just in there having fun and being, like I said, that family.
Yeah.
And it just grows on you. It changes you. It makes you think that, for me at least, I really saw that whole hard work. You know, the more you put into it, the more you will enjoy it, and the more you'll succeed at it. And I mean, Dondo and I and all the other people from our team who went to states and Nats and all the other people who've won awards, it just goes to show you, you know, if you really, really, really try hard, like, you will do well. It's something that either you never thought you could do or thought you were really awesome at, and then became super awesome.
Yeah, I think a lot. Sorry,
Go ahead.
I think a lot of us never even thought about the idea of competing at something at the state or national level. Like, I think a lot of people on the team never realized that they would do something like that, and so being able to have the opportunity to do that and to have a platform to speak and to say your ideas and say anything you want and argue anything you want and speak on a topic is amazing. And the fact that the community gives us 10 minutes to be like, okay, you have 10 minutes, tell us, like, convince us, or, you know, make a difference.
You can compete in forensics for 4 years, but there's rules for how long you can do it, like at a community college level or anything like that. So if you went straight into like a university, you could compete for 4 years at university. And so we only get students at most for 2 years, maybe, or 5 semesters. And so there's a lot we try to do with them to give them like as much experience as possible to prepare them. Because in the case of Alexis, she's moving. She's moving out of the country for her university, but they won't have a forensics team there. So like, this is it. But Adam's going to Cal State LA, and he's got 2 more years worth of eligibility. And so like, if you were to come back and interview him in 2 more years and be like, now what's forensics like? You know, what has it done? It'll be a totally different story. So hopefully he'll be like, PCC was way better. But still, nonetheless, I mean, it's
No offense, Cal State LA.
And so, but it's, I mean, when you do forensics for 4 years competitively, you know, like as a competitor, it has a really large impact on your life and like how you think and what you do and your perceptions and everything.
And as an instructor and a coach, what are your thoughts about like that process of getting students who are beginners to them becoming winners of medals?
Oh, it's extraordinarily rewarding. And like, just because like winning isn't, yeah, it sounds so cliche, but winning isn't everything. I've worked with a number of students who, like, when I met them, they were just kind of like this soulless little slug of a person, and they were like, I just want to try something, and I'm like, okay, and like by the end, maybe they had never even gone to a final round, but in terms of who they had become, in terms of their communication style, you know, they were more open, they were more assertive, and they had thoughts and opinions that were their own. That is just as rewarding as like someone taking 3 golds at nationals, right? There's really no like, you know, one or the other. So we take people, you know, of all shapes and sizes and stuff like that, and whether they are very successful or whether they just had a great positive experience and they found a place for themselves, that is equally rewarding. So, and to watch them grow over that time too. So.
For new students who may be watching this right now, what would you tell them about the program if they're like thinking about joining but maybe a little bit hesitant? What would you tell them or give them an advice? Or
I think that it just sort of changes your life, and I know that for me, entering the program, I was like really introverted and really, really scared of performing in front of people, and I think that the coaches really help us sort of just cut through that and kind of just force you to get out of your comfort zone. And at times you might be like, oh no, I hate this, I don't want to do it, but in the end, it just becomes like second nature. And it helps so much, like in the real world, like if you have a job interview, you're just kind of like, no, like they asked me this question and, oh, I can come up with 3 main points and I can give them a good argument on why they should hire me. And I can, you know, it becomes helpful when you're talking to people and when you're just, you know, just in life. Just communicating is such an important thing, and being able to connect with people.
I would just say for them to try it. I think that it's one of those things where you can take a speech course, you can take public speaking, you can take argumentation, you can take oral interp, and go through the class and just do the assignments. And you may or may not get something out of it. But joining the team, it's different than just taking a class. It's you get one-on-one time with a coach. It's like, you get to really reach deep into yourself and try something, to do something you would have never thought you would do, or something you've always thought you wanted to do. And it's awesome. It's, like I said, it's not like any other class that I've ever taken. I wouldn't even really call it a class. I just say the team, like my speech and debate team. I'm gonna go, almost like if you're on a sports team or a track and field, you have your individual events, but you represent your team. And I think that people, if they see that and they experience that, even for a small amount, they might have a different respect for it and understand it and be far more willing to join and then just saying, oh, I have to come up with this speech for speech one and just get it over with. And it's really encouraging, and like it says, it really does like affect you in public, not just public speaking, but in your day-to-day life, talking to anybody down the street.
What about you, Josh? I know you're leaving, but what would you tell new students that are thinking about it?
That as much as, we can talk, well, something I've said a lot is like, we can talk about it till we're blue in the face, but until you experience it, that's when like it really sinks in about what the atmosphere and what the experience is like. And and Adam's right. You just kind of have to, like, I think if there's any experience that will give you the confidence to just jump into something, I think forensics is it. Because forensics can be rewarding when you succeed, but it's equally rewarding even though it hurts when you fail. And like one of the things that forensics has taught me is that it's okay to fail, because that's where you learn. That's where you learn the most. And then when you do succeed, because of those previous failures, it's so much more just impacting your life. And so but you have to jump in first. And even if it sucks, at least you'll know afterwards. Well, it sucked, but I tried, and you can go on to be a better person. So.
Well, I feel I want to join now.
Do it.
Welcome back to PCC Voices. Our episode today is about public speaking and the speech and debate team here at PCC. What are some obstacles that you faced, since joining the team, and how did you overcome it? And also, Josh, when you were competing, what are
obstacles that I faced?
Yeah, or as a coach as well. Let's see. Do you want to start, Adam?
Obstacles, I would say for me specifically, I have a lot of energy and I tend to do lots of weird things with my body, and I think that one of the big things that I learned from taking speech and debate and the classes and really working one-on-one with the coaches is being mindful of everything that you do when everything that you do communicates something. And me being awkward or not knowing what to do with my hands or things and saying a lot, all these things you have to take into consideration and understand, say something about you, and speak sometimes more than the words that you're actually saying. So I had to learn how to quiet myself, and Cindy, who one of our coaches, she made fun of me for always having my feet too far apart. I don't understand. I have dead feet. It just happens like that. And she's like, no, straight. And it really puts you out of your comfort zone and challenges you, because we have really bad habits when it comes to talking and to being in front of people, and things that also within the speech and debate community are just weird things that they want you to do. I've never spoken with a book before, and learning how to hold this book without making it look weird. So little things like that, those were challenges unique to speech and debate, but also things that you learn about yourself. Maybe I'm a really fidgety person, and I should just chill on my coffee.
Yeah.
What about you?
For me, I think that my biggest obstacle is my nerves. I get really, really nervous. I'm sweating, and then I'm cold, and then I get up to perform, and my first competition, I remember my knees were shaking, and the whole time I was performing, I was just my knees are shaking, this is bad, I'm so embarrassed, this is terrible. And also I blink a lot. Whenever I'm trying to be dramatic, I'm blinking a lot, and so I've had to learn how to not blink. And my coaches are open your eyes, stop blinking, and stop fluttering your eyes. And so just small things that you wouldn't even think about normally are things that we have to work on. And I slur. I have one of my coaches, not this one, but one of the other coaches, Alan, was sometimes when you talk, it sounds like you used to have a speech impediment that you're getting over, and so you really have to work on enunciating, and these are just all things that in general make you a better speaker.
Nothing will make you more self-conscious and self-aware, though, than
Yeah.
being in like forensics.
I know you're talking about it now, and I'm like, oh,
Because,
what,
what am I doing
now?
Yeah, right? From a coach's perspective, you know, our job is to try and make you like polished and the message to be like the center of the performance and so forth. And so there's a lot of things that we take for granted that we do interpersonally that we think are fine, but that when it's done competitively or in a, like a more of a formalized setting, become distractions. And so when I started competing myself, I was coming out of the theater program, and like theater had been kind of, I had been getting cast and everything because I just had the ability to always be like big and funny. And so that came really easy for me. And so when I started doing forensics and I was performing, the whole atmosphere is different. Like when you perform, you're typically, especially like at a campus, on a college campus, it's you in a classroom and your judge and the audience is maybe 10 feet away from you. And so the same performance skills that you would use like on a stage for a theater don't translate very well when you're 10 feet away from your audience.
Yeah.
And so I had to overcome this obstacle that being big wasn't the only way to go. And like I've always been a big guy, and so that's kind of all I knew. And so the thing that I learned most to this day that I still think is great is that like forensics taught me how to be subtle. And it taught me about like, it really made me understand what the word nuance means, you know, which for the longest time was over my head. And then when I learned, I was like, I'm big, and so I learned how to do everything by half measures, because like someone who's like Alexis's size, if they need to be big, they have to do this. But me, with my size, I can just do this, and it's the same impact. And when I learned that, I was like, my world just blew up, and like I knew a lot of things came into place about how to communicate, not only just like in forensics, but like one-on-one, where I really gained so much self-awareness and the ability to monitor how I was coming off to others, like in face-to-face conversations and stuff. It was amazing, like, realization for me. It took about 2 years, though.
Yeah, like what are some skills that you got from being in the program that you notice yourself like when you're in your daily life, one-on-one conversations, you're like, oh.
I think that one of my favorite things that I've taken away from forensics is, so when I started writing my STE, my speech to entertain, part of my goal in doing that speech was I have to own my persona and I have to own who I am, because that's what that speech is all about. That's what people love to watch when they're watching STEs. And so one of the things Josh told me, he was like, I just want you to be Alexis, but like times 10. And so before I would have a lot of trouble like being myself right away and get really self-conscious, and I'd be like, I don't know if people are gonna like my humor, and sometimes I'm really awkward and dry, and so
I was like, yes, all of those
and
things.
then he was like, yes, just do that, and I was like, no, but it takes me a while to like do that. I have to get to know people, and he was like, no, like that's the thing, is that's what people are gonna love about you, and so you have to learn how to use what you do best and do that 20 times bigger, and learn that it's okay to just like be yourself, and that's what people are gonna love the most. And so that was one of the greatest things I think.
You learned to love yourself.
I did love myself, but I just learned that like I can be myself right away, and I don't have to like be weird about it. I can just jump right into it, and people are gonna love that. And so that was a really awesome thing.
Yeah.
When you said that, I had this vision of my dad and I getting into arguments, maybe not like arguments, but just discussions. And there was always a point at the time when I first joined where he would say like, oh, don't do that whole debater thing. And it became this thing where, am I really putting on this persona of wanting to be argumentative, or did he just like not know what to say against me? And it was something that showed me like, wow, this thing that I'm doing is changing the way that I communicate with like my father, and then also just talking to people. And I think also a little maturing happened kind of a little bit, but then being able to use that as a tool to mature and to grow from within your shell and come out and, you know, like you said, be comfortable with yourself. I've always been loud. I've always been this person who had a big personality, and learning like the nuances of when to dial it back, when to, you know, like Alan, our coach, would say, he's like, there's those moments. You have to really emphasize the moments and capitalize on that. And for me, I kind of just go all the moments all at once, and so that kind of to me was like, you know, appreciate the moments. It's so like, you know, meta is to say like appreciate the moments. But really, like it's the truth of speaking in life. Really, I think so.
Those are some good lessons.
Putting your best self forward.
Yeah.
And without taking time.
Yeah.
Like just put it right away. Are there some stories that you remember that happened with you that you can share with us?
I mean, if you're gonna ask
Something
me,
that we can share.
so because we just talked about the one thing that we did this year that, like every year, and every team has like different dynamics and everything. But over this past year, I've taken up like a lot like hiking very seriously, and so at some point I was like, I'm going to make the team go hike with me. And at first it was like some of them did it with me, and we had a couple, but I was like wasn't totally enthusiastic. And then as we were getting closer to state nationals, and our team had gotten good size, and everyone had clearly like gelled. Like we at that point, after about 6 months of being together, everyone pretty much loved each other. And so right before we went to our state championships, we had a really good hike. And then right before our nationals, about 20 of us all showed up, and we did like a nice hike. And we went out to this place in Sierra Madre called Chantry Flats, and we went to an area that had like water that was deep enough that you could jump into. And it was cool because, well, actually the water was very cool.
Yeah.
But I mean the act where like myself and Adam and Alexis, and then a number of our other members who went to the national tournament, we all just jumped in. And like I was looking at it, I was like, I didn't plan this, but
Like off a cliff.
symbolic.
Yeah.
Like it was about
Cliff
20
jump.
foot,
Yeah.
like 20 foot.
It was
down
kind of
into this
symbolic.
water.
It was like a metaphor
It
for
was.
all of us.
It was. It was just like, symbolically, this is nice that we're all like literally jumping in together, and we're doing this together. And it was a really wonderful like end and cap to the year right before we went to nationals, and we took a lot of that momentum, that love with us to Cleveland, which is where nationals was, and we did well, And so like this being my last year, I'm always going to remember that. And so like I have tons of stories. Not all of them are like very shareable. Some of them are really funny, but like at the end of my career coaching forensics, that's when I'm always going to remember. And like it's great that we have the photos and now we have video of it too. But just like the feeling of being there and watching my students, because like I jumped and everyone else was like, okay, what we're gonna jump to, and I was like, that's pretty amazing. So.
Yeah, and we didn't plan it. We were just kind of like Josh said, he jumped, and then I said something like, I would jump, except I didn't bring my clothes, and I don't have a towel or anything. And then someone was like, I have one, and then everyone just ended up jumping together. And so
It's kind of like a forensics baptism, really.
Yeah.
Like we all just,
Like-
it was the finale. It was like, okay, we're all in this. And I think that really was kind of like, when I think about it, it was pretty symbolic. It was
Yeah.
Great.
awesome. Yeah.
it was so beautiful.
Well, thank you for sharing that
Yeah.
story. I think that's it for our episode today. Thank you so much for being our guests, Adam, Josh, Alexis.
Yeah.
Thank
It was
you.
a pleasure having you with us.
Thanks for having us.
Any
So
last things or something you would like to say at the end of
Join
this
the speech
episode?
team.
Join the speech team.
I just lost the game.
Oh, that's very good.
Okay, well, thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. This was PCC Voices. I am Nagam Levy. See you next time.